So in my last video we talked about the left and right axis and why it's fundamentally flawed, but Goblin, you dumbass, what about the authoritarian and libertarian axis? You're right, Jimmy, we should roast that one too. So what that axis actually gave us except a colorful square and an ultimate meme format respectfully? Nothing, and in this video I will explain you guys why. Enjoy. So let's settle down some things. If I would make a glorified personality test which would show people where they exactly are in the schemes of politics, I would try to make it a legit useful tool and I would try to be not biased. I cannot stress this one enough. Is political compass any of these things? No, it's not. Firstly, some practical problems which doesn't apply on political compass only, but on all sorts of exile-based political charts. Let's just say you unironically got results like this here. That means you are peak definition of an extremist. And in this case, why exactly have you take this test if you don't even believe in democracy and have no intention to vote anyone? But whatever, doesn't matter. So being extremist is bad. That's why you should aim for the exact opposite, right? Right. So you are indeed a grill dad who have no strong opinions on the things around you. And you manage to get yourself into that sweet mid spot. Now, who should I vote? Parties which claims to be centrist, which is like all of them? What I just described is called the centrist paradox. It's a big issue right now and it showcases some practical problems what political compass has. The funny thing is that this is still the best scenario where we don't count with things like biases because oh boy, this side. There is a lot to unpack here. I suppose most of you guys already knew for what these two axes stands for, but for those who don't, y-axis stands for social policies while the x-axis stands for economic policies. You can argue with me that the y-axis shows how should government control its citizens, but I listened to some podcasts on the site where they directly said y-axis represents all sorts of social issues like abortion, church involvement into the education, and abstract art for some reason. TLDR made a really good video about why political compass doesn't work. You should definitely give them a shot, but I disagree with one of the statements in the video. They explained that the political compass have this tendency to drag people into the lib left corner, which is like true, and in their opinion it's just a small error and the people from political compass should fix these tiny issues and everything will be alright. But here's the thing, they will never fix these errors anytime soon, because dare I say, these errors are indeed purposeful. Why? Because political compass is something what some uncultured swines would call left-wing propaganda. Personally, I just call them NeoMarxists who don't know what the hell they talk about. Well, that was a heavy statement to say, so what made me say so? On the side you can find out about Lenin's thoughts on Ukraine, which is right now a controversial topic, so to set it straight, I stand with Ukraine. Article itself was okay, the problem is the context in which the article have been added. Oh, it's so cool to know that Lenin would support Ukraine. I'm pretty sure that all of his successors like Stalin shared the same opinion. And you would never pick this memoir just to save your asses from criticism. It's not like you always supported a regime which for decades suppressed a nation who is now relevant, aren't you? Speaking of struggle for socialism, if you would ask Karl Marx what socialism is, you would get an answer that socialism is a natural step towards communism. That's all nice and good, but in this case, why there is an axis about communism and opposing capitalism, and then a whole axis about socialism? Either political compass don't know shit about the ideology they clearly supporting, or they really think that lib left corner is the true communism. We will get to the word true in a minute, because if there is an underdog protagonist in this story, then it's definitely the authoritarian left corner. You see, communism managed to do some pretty fucked up shit during the time it's been around, and if you are brainwashed neo-Marxist, this fact become really common talking point against you. Resolution: create a whole corner for political movements which wanted the same thing as you, they just so happened to fucked up miserably. And that's why you're saying that they weren't the true communists. Metaphorically speaking, you created a whole basket for your bad apples. I mean, in my opinion, the problem are not the apples but the tree from which you got those apples, but I'm not here to judge. Wait, I am here to judge. I mean, looking on their rankings of certain political figures, this whole y-axis starts to look less like an authoritarian and libertarian axis and more like a good, bad. The other cheeky thing on the side which caught my attention was this little podcast here. Was Hitler a socialist? And as a true zoomer as I am, you knew I had to hear this one. The podcast was kinda lighthearted. Their main reasons that Hitler was not socialist, of course, was because they say so. They compared him to Stalin and they eventually admit that there was a lot in common between the two, but then they said that although they were pretty similar in the past, their visions of future were completely different, which of course they don't explain in what exactly. Later in the podcast they said how Winston Churchill and Mahatma Gandhi view Hitler as a person before the war, which again somehow should explain that he wasn't a socialist, and then they closed down. Overall I was hoping for more cringe, but then a second podcast shows up. And man, this one here give the first one so much more context. So I don't know in what kind of order these podcasts were made, but I strongly believe that this one here is older. The podcast tries to explain us how fascism works, which is a genuinely interesting topic, but don't forget we talk about NeoMarxists and libtards here. How I knew these guys are libtards? I don't know, I just went here and oh look, it's the guy's book. First thing first, they explain the difference between fascism and Nazism, so far so good, and then immediately throw the topic of fascism into the trash and start to talk about Nazis and why they weren't socialists, because of course, well actually maybe they were called the National Socialist German Workers' Party, but Democratic People's Republic of Korea is not democratic too. Wow, I can't believe my ears. First legit argument why Hitler wasn't a socialist. It's dumb as fuck, but it's finally something different than because we say so. Okay, sometimes names of certain things doesn't mean what they actually stands for, except when they does. Later in the podcast they settled down, they stopped talk shit, but at the very end the dude just came with such a insane, downright conspiratory theory. Man, I telling you, they think that the whole Nazi thing were just a tool of corpos who wanted to get rid of the labor unions. Okay, I will explain you why this is a complete bullshit. You see, what Nazis were aiming for was a dictatorship of one party, the Nazi Party. Labor unions were indeed a threat, just like corpos, I remind you. So as a socialist, they reorganized them so they would be under their control. So saying Nazis banned labor unions without mentioning that they created their own is straight up lie. It's pretty obvious by now why Political Compass decided to do these podcasts. They just want to bust some common talking points against neo-Marxism, and also they try to mock the lib-right corner, basically because just their existence proves that they are wrong. So if the y-axis is good, bad, the x-axis is straight up our front of liberation versus the evil capitalist. Still 10 out of 10 meme format, just don't take the Political Compass side itself for a grant. Man, I'm pissed off. This is the end of the video.